Good evening, all. Tonight we continue our deliberations with some of our remaining budget departments. And Mr. City Manager, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. We have two reviews tonight. We had rescheduled the police till tonight, and we still have the Otis Library, which will go after police. And just a reminder that we've got a work session at 7, so we got an hour to go to 7 on this. So I don't really have any opening statement, and I'll leave it to the chief for that, or we can get right into questions, whatever you like.
Chief?
Just we're pleased to present our budget presentation for the council to review. We submitted a package to the city manager, which we can get to you if you so desire, the full package, and then he trimmed it, and that is the package you see tonight. If you have any questions about it, we'll be more glad to go into it, and we'll go from there.
Would be helpful to have that packet later for all the members.
Yep.
I may say that there may be some confusion about the replacement of the vacant positions. We've staggered them in during the year to make some savings. So it's a little tricky to follow. We do fill them during the year, but we don't fill them all as of July 1st. We have phasing them in as the year goes on, and it works somewhat because we never get 4 in at the same time. So I don't. Josh, do you have the exact schedule for that when we put that as the narrative?
It's in the notes too.
Yeah, on page 71, you can see in the right column, there's a little caret next to police officer step 1. It says 9.5,
okay. Yeah, I see
and
that.
then down below it says assumes hiring 2 officers in January 2019 and 2 officers in April 2019.
Thanks. I didn't even see that. Okay.
Which is kind of like what the city manager said. This is done to save money to the city, but also to allow us to find qualified candidates. 2 is about what we can find in this current climate right now. It's very difficult to find qualified candidates, and we're not going to change our standards. So this allows us to find officers, get into the academy without losing the spots, but also save the city some money by not having to fund the positions for the full year.
Members have questions? Alderman DeLucia.
Okay, so as the end result of the shifting around of the positions as you described is a net decrease of 4.5 people. So I'm looking at if I'm looking at the subtotal correctly, I see this
240.
No, because there was a request for additional officers.
Oh, okay.
You got to go back to the table of organization at the projected. It was 87.88. That's the actual
yeah, I just needed
number.
to look one column to the left. That's,
right.
Yeah.
In our original package, we asked for an additional detective to be assigned to narcotics, new position, and another officer to be assigned to community policing. So that's why you'll see that our request was up. Was for 2 more, but that was to survive the city manager's budget.
Is there a microphone over there? I don't know if people.
You're going to have to hold it because it's not, unless it's close. Or clip it into your pocket. There you go. Now you can really be heard.
And I'm all the way over here, so I can't hear that one.
How about now? You hear it now?
Yes.
So the first thing that pops into my head is if we're reducing the number of FTEs or full-time employees, what unforeseen impact could we experience in overtime?
It's a foreseen impact, and you'll see the replacement overtime account that's been adjusted to kind of absorb some of that. We do try to use our staffing. We reconfigured the staffing of the department and the shifts over the last year, trying to maximize it. So we do have days where we have some movable people that we can move into open spots, but we will have to fill some other spots to not lower service as a result.
So the projection on overtime is based on historical experience over the last X number of years?
3 years. We based it off the last 3 years.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you.
Well, any other members' questions? Alderman Gould?
Thank you for being here, Chief Daly, Deputy Chief Farasi. Excuse me. How many officers do we have now that are designated as community police?
There's 5 and a sergeant.
And it's all days, days and evenings?
It's a mix.
or-
There's 1 on days and 4 on evenings, and the sergeant will kind of flip his schedule as needed.
Okay, and the opioid crisis, how is that impacting the city of Norwich?
Well, we now treat every opioid death as a crime scene, so it's increasing the burden on our detectives. Last year, we had 35 opioid-related deaths in Norwich. We were in the top category in our state for our size. And it's very labor-intensive. We have to track down phone records and full investigations, trying to go to find the dealer and the supplier. We all had that moving presentation back a couple months ago with a mother made some very good points that touched us all. And we've had some successes. We forwarded out last week where a dealer in Hartford was just arrested from an overdose death in Norwich. But it takes time. It takes a lot of effort. It takes, it's pretty much all our 2 narcotic detectives are dealing with right now. And if it wasn't for our help from our federal partners, we would be struggling worse than we are.
And do we still confiscate vehicles?
Yes.
What's roughly the average number of vehicles we confiscate in a year?
Probably 5 to 8, just a rough estimate.
And what usually happens with those vehicles afterward?
If the case is disposed of, they are turned over to the police department.
And we typically keep them, we sell them, we...
We were
Use them
hanging
for
on to them for
undercover?
a while, use them for a little bit for various purposes, and then we'll sell them. Last year, we sold several vehicles. Sergeant Camp led the initiative. We cleaned out the impound lot of old vehicles. We took it to auction, sold them, and then used them to obtain some cell phone security equipment.
Okay, thank you.
Other members' questions?
Just to piggyback off of Alderwoman Gould, are our officers trained in Narcan, the administration of Narcan?
No. In consultation with American Ambulance and due to American Ambulance's close proximity and response time, we don't administer Narcan because the ambulance is usually responding before us or with us. We're not like the surrounding towns that are a little bit more rural, so we rely on the ambulance and the fire departments to do that.
So as first responders, it's not a priority?
We're not first responders.
Police aren't considered first responders in
No.
Norwich?
Anywhere. Alderman DeLucia?
First question for you, Chief. I noticed that, and I read earlier that you, now let me follow it up by saying that I know that the department has had very positive experience with getting grants, both federal and the state level. Would you say that that is holding status quo, or is that slacking off because of fiscal concerns at the state level?
The state, it's definitely slacking off at the state level. I'll be honest with you, there's some federal pass-through grants that have been slow in passing through to the point where we're talking to our federal partners to try to put some pressure downwards because the police chiefs have been pushing upwards. It doesn't seem to be getting anywhere. There's also the concern of the state issues, and they have their own bills to pay. Federally, those grants are staying, but COPS grants, which used to allow us to grow the community policing program and start it, they're down from 2 or 3 awards into the state of Connecticut. The last 2 years, they've only given out 1 award. So that's made it very, very difficult competition. 2 years ago, we came in second. Last year, we came in third. If this had been a normal year, we probably would have been funded one or both of those years.
And would you say that, when the grants sunset for one reason or another, that we are absorbing that into the city's budget, or are we letting those programs come to an end?
If we can find a way to afford them, we will. A good example of that is our domestic violence officer. That was a program that was funded by grants, a Violence Against Women grant, probably 10 years ago. And as that program sunsetted, we found ways to continue the program. You know, you'll see a presentation later tonight from the Safe Futures. We have a domestic violence advocate who works with an officer in the police department. And it's been a great partnership. It's not a full-time job, but we do what we can to continue the program.
Okay, thank you. My last question is for the city manager. Mr. Solomon, we're all aware that the bargaining unit for the police and the city have contentious issues that need to be worked out. As that resolution comes to pass, does this budget reflect what we could expect will be our obligation from the city side monetarily?
There is some money in contingency, but some of the larger issues, like the pension, are not in this budget yet. I will tell you that we are getting closer, so there is some positive movement. We're in arbitration, but we are allowed to negotiate even during arbitration. A lot of people don't realize that, and so we're making some progress on that. But other than contingency, which has some projected salary increases, we haven't impacted the other line items because we don't know what ultimately will happen.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Welcome. Anyone else? Thank you very much.
One quick thing, I aired, and I didn't want to leave the thing of the state's leave us high and dry. One area that's been very, very positive and has changed recently is the highway grants, the safe driving grants, distracted driving, DUI. Those used to be 75-25 matches, and they're now 100% reimbursable through the state of Connecticut. We have a distracted driving campaign going on right now during the day for targeting cell phone, texting, and driving. And those are now 100% reimbursable by the state. So that's a success story of the state. Just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
Just one, I'm sorry. I was just going to make one comment. Congratulations on you're being honored on Friday, the April 27th, by Safe Futures for your dedication to trying to put an end to domestic violence. I look forward to seeing that.
That is another, just a small outcropping of our relationship with Safe Futures and how we took that pilot program of the Violence Against Women domestic violence officer and how that's continued now, probably close to 14 years later. We're still at it, trying to do what we can to end domestic violence.
Thank you very much.
Bless you. It's getting kind of lonely up there.
Okay, the next budget is the Otis budget, and I see people coming forward, okay. In my peripheral vision, I don't have a lot of dexterity with this. It's pretty ugly, but it works.
I thought I did. My paperclip
Yeah, right?
There's one line item,
Right.
you know, Otis is, only has, it's a contribution to Otis. It's a nice round,
Rice-
$1
Rice round
million.
$1 million,
Oh,
yes.
I don't
So-
need a page for that.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. Thanks.
I don't have any
Or
statement
116.
on that. I'll turn it over.
I can still remember the number.
I'm going to leave it all to you.
God bless you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, use this.
Thank you. I also wanted to introduce Nicholas Fortson. Nick is the treasurer of the Otis Library, and I guess, if it's not presumptuous of me, the future vice president of the board. Is that correct? Yes. So, thank you all for entertaining our request. I do have a few items that I'm not going to go through in great detail, but I will share with you and leave with you that I prepared in anticipating this meeting. The first of them is a result of attending the strategic planning meeting on March 3rd, and I thought it would be valuable to go through the plan of conservation and development and annotate for you those areas where I felt that Otis Library was making a tangible contribution to the furtherance of the goals and objectives in that plan. So I do have that, and while I'd be the first to say that brevity is not my friend, never has been, I did limit it to 6 pages, which I think is pretty good for me. And I hope that it will give you a few specific references that you can enjoy. Now that's one. Okay. The other document, which is even briefer, is based on, I don't know, I hope that you're familiar with the Data Haven report. What I did there was go through the notes from the well-being survey, and specifically the ones for Norwich, and pointed out those areas where I felt Otis Library was contributing to reversing some of the less positive comments that were being made. So I also have that with me as well. And again, I would leave those for your future consideration, hoping that they, again, kind of fill in some of the gaps that in knowledge about what we're doing. Is it your turn? This is the last of them. Honestly, I haven't. Okay.
I just didn't feel like getting up.
You didn't? Oh dear. Well. If you recall, our request for this year is a flat funded budget. We're not asking for any increases. And that, I think, is an acknowledgement of the current fiscal challenges that the city is facing. The Otis Library budget will, of necessity, increase slightly in the area of approximately 2%. And those increases are by and large in places where we don't have a great deal of control or flexibility. For example, we are facing an implosion, which has already occurred in the state interlibrary loan system. So that system is no longer functional at the state level for all intent and purpose. And in order to compensate for that and to continue to afford the public the opportunity to borrow from outside of our library and outside of our consortium, or within our consortium, each of the libraries in the consortium is being assessed a certain amount of money based on their circulation figures, and our part of that will be just under $5,000. So that will be beginning in the new fiscal year, 18-19. Other potential increases are in things like benefits, specifically health insurance. Now, I noticed in the budget that you use a 3% figure for possible increases. Otis Libraries, because of our status, our contribution will always be more than that. So we're using a figure of approximately 5%, and that itself could be a rather conservative figure. We're also, as the city is, we're facing a prospective increase in our utilities. We've, I think, done an excellent job over the last few years of tamping down increases by installing an elaborate system of lighting with the help of Norwich Public Utilities. We've been rigorous in the use of our gas, to the point of going down every night and turning the boilers off and not turning them on again until the morning in order to save a few pennies here and there. But these things have a cumulative effect on what we can do. Those are some of the things that we face. I think in terms of expenditures, we have been extremely prudent over the last several years. And I think we could say categorically that that isn't going to change as long as we have responsible fiscal agents in charge of the library. I also want to point out that I think it's fair to say that the library is filling a lot of niches that are either currently unfilled by other organizations or we've identified as pertinent to our mission. One that I'm sure you're all familiar with is the recent initiative for multicultural programming and events. That's something that we look forward to being a partner with the city on. That's an area where Otis Library has extensive experience. To give you just a few salient examples, we have a position that is dedicated specifically to cultivating support in new American communities, immigrant communities, and I think that will be of specific help in helping the city to make connections where they would like to in order to enhance business opportunities. That's something that we have a long-standing commitment to. And as you may know, last week, our Multicultural Services Coordinator, Bassem Gayed, was awarded with an Immigrant Day Award at the state capitol for his work in the community and his profession in helping to cultivate better relationships with new American communities. That was also one of the reasons that we were able to achieve the status of a medal winner in the 2016. So I think that those are the sorts of things that may not be immediately associated with the library's mission, but in fact they are areas that we feel are integral to the well-being and health of the community, and we're very proud to be a part of making those happen. So if you have questions, this is a good time to ask them, because I'll just keep on going. And you don't want to experience that. I'm sure you're all aware of that.
Members, questions?
Thank you for being here and all the wonderful things you do. And I think you mentioned in here that the library frequently serves as our de facto community center because we don't have one. The facilities that you have are amazing. I went to the Anne Frank exhibit, and the fact that 15,000 people saw that is very important, especially given the news of late that 2/3 of millennials don't know what Auschwitz is. So I think it's very important that you bring these things to us. So I just have one question. What percentage of the budget is this contribution, of your overall budget is this contribution?
It's over 50%.
Over 50%?
Yep.
Wow. Okay. Thank you.
Members, other questions?
Nick, did you want to say anything? Yeah, Nick had a few syllables.
Just, again, my name is Nick Fortson. I'm treasurer of the organization of the library. I can still consider myself a fairly new person in the city. I've been here since 2009. I'm also president, chief executive officer of Core Plus Federal Credit Union. And I understand that, you know, when you go through, you're looking at your budget and you're trying to figure out where to allocate your resources. I also understand, too, that, you know, a lot of times we got to go out to the taxpayers and ask them to pay more. And so, you know, as you go through the budget, a lot of times it's just easy to cut. But let me just tell you my thoughts, and this is not just because I'm treasurer of the Otis Library. Again, you know, I've run Core Plus Federal Credit Union, and I had kids that went to school in this area. But the bottom line is, when you look at Otis Library, I'd encourage you to look at it as an economic engine for the city of Norwich. And what do I mean by that? If I'm a small business person and I'm doing some research on how to open up a successful business, the first place I go to is the library. And the reason I go to the library is because they've got all the resources. You think that you can find all these resources on the internet, but they've got the people at the library who can tell you exactly where to go to help do the research for your business. So that's very important. Employees, I always encourage my employees to go to the library to improve your skills, okay? Improve your skills. If you go to the library and if English is your second language, you go to the library, they've got people over there that will help you to learn English and be proficient so that you can come to work and be successful. If you are looking to improve your skills on business or anything that we do at the credit union, you come to the library because you got free resources. So from that aspect, that it's an economic engine. A couple of weeks ago, I was here first thing in the morning before the library opened up, and as soon as that door opens, there's a rush of people coming in to grab the computers, because what they're doing is they're doing job searches, and they're also preparing their resumes on the computer. A lot of these people don't have the resources at home, so they come to the library and they can do it free without having to buy a cup of coffee. So you can do that at the library. A couple of other things I'd like to say too, which is understated, is that one of the primary users of libraries are mothers, okay? And I've seen this a number of times going into library also, where a mother may have a job, and guess what? She uses the library to drop off her kids so that she can make a living. Okay, a lot of these are single mothers. So again, I use the term economic engines. Another thing that is misunderstood about the library, assume that you did not have the library in the middle of Norwich. The property values would go down across within 1 mile radius from Otis Library throughout the city, the property values would drop. This was a study that was done in a lot of major cities, and that is, I guarantee you, that is very common here today, or is very appropriate for Otis Library. So they do a lot. They do a lot. And again, one of the things about Otis Library, too, the quality of services that they provide, they bring in more people. And I can't, other than the school system, I can't imagine another institution that is a public institution that brings in more people to into the facility, to downtown, than Otis Library. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Members, have any concerns, questions, comments? Yes, Alderman Gould.
Just a comment. Thank you both for being here tonight. Just wanted to say again how much I enjoyed being at the naturalization ceremony that you had last week at the library. It's incredible that these 19 adults made the commitment to become U.S. citizens, and it was really a very lovely ceremony.
Thank you.
Any further concerns? Alderman DeLucia.
I've sat, as you well know, I sat down with the staff, and we had a great conversation about all of the things that the library does for the city. And I just want to say, once again, I know I said in that meeting, and I'll say in this public venue, how much I value what you do and how much I appreciate what you provide for the community. Because, sir, just the few examples that you gave really just scratched the surface of what happens in that library every day. And at least with this alderman, that is recognized and appreciated, and I'm sure that that's universal across the dais. And I thank you for the effort that you and your staff put in, because certainly, how best to say this, you don't work to rule. You work far above what's expected or what could be demanded of you, and that is also deeply appreciated.
Thank you very much.
Other members? Thank you for your presentation and all that you're doing, and look forward to the work ahead.
Okay, that's it for the budget. I guess we'll take a recess till 7 o'clock.
Yep. Oh, it's inside the folder. It's got to go up, right? Mute on. I've never done this.
Oh,
Unmute on.
Okay, I guess I'll make this one now. And quarterly, that are due this month. Hello. I'm trying to make spring come with your parents. She's not listening. No. I want to make sure she's not listening. We're going to Portland this weekend. Is it going to be freezing? I mean, it's not. It's front of me. We usually go the first, we usually go more, Wednesday weekend or in December. So it's a little, you never know. My first day off. The last week off I had was my mom. Not vacation, but it's not, yeah, I know what it was.
Yeah, we went to Nashville, New Hampshire. And they have a
Never been a member.
country club and over out there with Liz and Taylor and those guys. And let me tell you, we went in and it was really nice weather. We came out and it was good.
It's the first of the quarterly report,
Yeah?
okay?
How cool is this?
This is your
How cool is this? I mean, it would be cool, like, can you email it to us afterwards? No. Can you email it to us afterwards? Like,
yeah. Got a lot of stuff in there.
things, we're still gonna do it.
That's cool. Yeah, because everybody gives you this stuff already, so like, why
Yeah.
not
Yeah, it's all in one
pass it
spot.
on? Yay! I was thinking about that.
I didn't forget about it.
No, I know. I know you got a lot going on, but this,
Excuse me.
because this will proactively answer questions too that people have for you. Say, it's in the
No,
report.
I thought
It's
it
in the
was a
report.
great idea.
Perfect. Democracy in action.
This is awesome.
Because I just had a